I try to be as consistent as I can. I don't never want to try to overwork myself. And then if it's not gonna be how I want it to be, I'm not gonna just jump on it right then. I'm still gonna wait.
On the night of August 21st, 2024, multiple gunshots were reported in the Germania Park neighborhood of Birmingham, Alabama. When officers arrived at the 500 block of 10th Avenue West, they found two individuals with gunshot wounds. The victims were identified as 28-year-old Kayla Warren and 20-year-old Brian Adams. Kayla was found inside the home and died that night at the hospital. Brian, found outside, died the next day. Police launched a homicide investigation. For months, there were no arrests. Then, in April 2025, two 23-year-old men, Jamil Carrillo Jemison and Ladre Todd Green, were taken into custody and charged with capital murder. It appeared that the case was moving forward. But less than 2 months later, on June 4th, 2025, those charges were dismissed by a Jefferson County judge. The reason? Insufficient evidence. No trial took place. The suspects were released, and the case went cold again. To this day, there has been no explanation of what directly linked the suspects to the shooting. No murder weapon was recovered. No eyewitnesses have come forward publicly. No clear motive has been confirmed. There are also unanswered questions about whether one of the victims may have had ties to the events that led to the shooting. Theories exist, but facts remain limited. This is a double homicide with no resolution. In this documentary, we break down everything, from the initial shooting to the arrests to the unexpected dismissal charges. This is a story of crime with more questions than answers, and a justice process that stopped before it ever started. If you're captivated by real crime stories that peel back the layers of truth, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us as we uncover real cases, raise awareness, and give a voice to the voiceless. Before we dive into today's story, we want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? And how do you feel as the story unfolds? Welcome to Deadly Crime Unmasked, the show where we expose the shocking crimes that rip through communities and the chilling secrets lurking behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Don't forget to subscribe and activate notifications. You won't want to miss the gripping story that's coming up. Now, let's dive in. Kayla Warren was a 28-year-old woman living in Birmingham at the time of her death. She was recognized locally as an aspiring artist. Her work had gained some attention in local creative spaces, where she often showcased her art and connected with other creators. People familiar with her describe her as someone who was consistent in her craft and highly involved in small-scale exhibitions and neighborhood art events. There were no public reports of criminal activity or past arrests linked to Kayla Warren. Background checks and police statements confirmed she had no criminal record. She was not known to be involved in any form of street activity or behavior that would typically associate her with high-risk situations. Local sources describe her as quiet, private, and focused on her goals. While she maintained a low public profile, those who knew her saw her regularly engage in art-related activities. She had not been connected to any public altercations, criminal investigations, or community disturbances. Brian Adams, a 20-year-old male who was found injured outside or near the same location where Kayla Warren was shot. On August 21st, 2024, at 8:30 p.m., multiple reports of gunfire were received by the Birmingham Police Department. The calls were centered around the 500 block of 10th Avenue West in the Germania Park neighborhood, a residential area located west of downtown Birmingham. Police officers were dispatched to the location. Upon arrival, officers discovered two individuals suffering from gunshot wounds. One of the victims, Kayla Warren, 28, was found inside a home. She had sustained life-threatening injuries. Emergency medical personnel arrived on scene and immediately transported her to UAB Hospital. A second victim, identified as Brian Adams, 20, was located outside or in the immediate vicinity of the residence. He had also sustained critical gunshot wounds. Like Warren, he was transported by emergency services to UAB Hospital for treatment. At the time of the shooting, there were no suspects at the scene. No weapons were recovered immediately. The scene was secured and officers began processing forensics. collecting shell casings and canvassing the neighborhood for witnesses or surveillance footage. By the early hours of August 22nd, 2024, Kayla Warren was pronounced dead due to her injuries. Later that same day, Brian Adams also died in the hospital. With the deaths of both victims confirmed, the Birmingham Police Department officially classified the incident as a double homicide. A homicide investigation was opened. Detectives from the department's homicide division took over the case. Officers continued processing evidence from the scene, attempting to reconstruct the sequence of events leading up to the shooting. At this stage, police did not release any information about potential motives, suspects, or whether the two victims had been targeted intentionally. The public was informed only that two individuals had died in connection with the shooting. Between late August 2024 and March 2025, the case remained open but unsolved. Law enforcement continued investigating, but no major public updates were provided. Local media occasionally reported on the status of the case, but Birmingham police did not release details about leads, evidence, or persons of interest. Police began canvassing the area for surveillance footage. This included checking nearby residential homes, businesses, and any city-installed cameras that might have recorded activity before or after the shooting. Investigators were looking for vehicle movement, suspicious individuals, or any signs of forced entry. However, no publicly released footage confirmed a direct link to the shooting. There were no clear reports that surveillance footage captured the actual shooting. If any footage existed, it was either inconclusive or not strong enough to be used as key evidence during the pretrial process. Law enforcement has not confirmed whether any camera recordings were submitted to the court. Investigators also interviewed community members and possible eyewitnesses. Residents were asked if they heard gunfire, saw anyone fleeing the scene, or noticed anything suspicious in the hours before the incident. Any leads generated from these interviews were not publicly disclosed. No witnesses came forward with definitive claims that could identify a shooter or provide details of the incident timeline. Without strong eyewitness testimony or solid camera footage, the case lacked key forms of direct evidence typically used in homicide prosecutions. The type of weapon used in the crime was not publicly disclosed. Police did not report finding a firearm at the scene. No forensic analysis, such as ballistic testing or gun residue reports, was released to the media or community. This lack of detail made it difficult to connect suspects to the physical act of shooting. The absence of information about the firearm also raised questions about whether it had been recovered at all, or whether any bullet casings were matched to specific weapons known to be associated with suspects. A clear motive for the double shooting was never revealed. The police did not state whether the victims were targeted or whether the incident was random. Investigators did not comment on whether the victims knew their killers or the crime was a case of mistaken identity. There were no reports of a robbery, altercation, or prior threat leading up to the shooting. Without motive, establishing a theory of the crime in court becomes significantly more difficult for prosecutors. When police arrested Jamil Carrillo Jemison and Ladre Todd Green in April 2025, they did not publicly explain what evidence tied them to the crime. There was no release of surveillance images, forensic reports, or testimonies indicating the suspects were at the crime scene. It is unknown whether cell phone data, vehicle tracking, or social media messages played any role in their arrest. No documents detailing the investigative reasoning were made available before charges were dropped. This left the public and observers unclear on how and why the suspects became persons of interest in the first place. Ultimately, the evidence against the two men was not strong enough to hold up in court. While capital murder charges were initially filed, the case never advanced to a full trial. The judge overseeing the preliminary hearings ruled that the evidence presented did not meet the threshold required to proceed to prosecution. As a result, the case stalled. No key eyewitness, no murder weapon, and no forensic or digital links had been established to a degree sufficient for trial. This created a major setback for investigators, and as of the judge's ruling in June 2025, no alternative suspects had been announced. On April 11, 2025, nearly 8 months after the double shooting, Jamil Carrillo Jemison and Ladre Todd Green, both 23 years old, were arrested and charged with capital murder. The charges were filed based on the results of the investigation, though specific evidence was not made public. Both suspects were taken into custody and held in jail pending a court appearance. Their arrest was announced by the Birmingham Police Department's Crime Reduction Team, which have been working on unsolved homicides and long-term investigations. In Alabama, capital murder is the most serious homicide charge. It typically involves additional circumstances, such as multiple victims, murder during the commission of another felony like robbery, or murders involving firearms from a vehicle. Because this case involved 2 victims, it qualified for capital murder. If convicted, the suspects could have faced life without parole or the death penalty. Defense attorneys representing the accused men challenged the charges, citing a lack of evidence. During preliminary hearings, the defense argued that the state had not presented sufficient proof to justify holding the suspect for trial. Key arguments included no physical evidence, such as fingerprints, DNA, or the murder weapon, no surveillance showing either suspect at or near the scene, no eyewitness identification, no motive or documented connection between the suspects and victims. The defense maintained that arresting the men without concrete proof was unconstitutional and unsupported. The unanswered questions are, what was the relationship between Kayla and Bryan? Why were they at that location? Who owned the gun used? Was it a targeted killing or mistaken identity? Was Bryan involved in activities that made him a target? Why were 2 men arrested without clear evidence? In April 2025, authorities arrested 2 suspects, Jamil Carrillo Jemison and Ladre Todd Green, both 23 years old, after months of investigation. They were each charged with capital murder in connection with the shootings. These arrests were seen as a significant step forward at the time. However, on June 4th, 2025, a Birmingham judge dismissed all capital murder charges against both men. The reason given was insufficient evidence to proceed to trial. The prosecution did not present enough proof during preliminary hearings to meet the threshold required to continue with formal prosecution under Alabama law. Both suspects were released from custody, and the case was returned to an active but unsolved status. Authorities did not refile the charges, and no retrial date was set. Following the dismissal of charges, there have been no new public updates or leads released by the Birmingham Police Department. Law enforcement has not identified any new persons of interest, and the department has not shared any additional investigative developments with the media. There has also been no release of key investigative details, including the motive behind the shooting, the type of firearm used, ballistic evidence or forensic results, phone records, surveillance footage, or witness statements, whether the victims were targeted or killed at random. Because of the limited information shared publicly, speculation remains widespread, but facts are scarce. As of this report, no one has been convicted or held legally accountable for the murders of Kayla Warren and Bryan Adams. The local community in Germania Park in Greater Birmingham continues to be left without clear answers. The lack of resolution has led to growing concern about the effectiveness of the investigation and the strength of the original case presented to the court. Law enforcement has urged anyone with information to come forward. However, no updates have been made to indicate whether any tips or leads have been helpful or credible. There has been no public briefing since June 2025. The department's homicide division has kept the case open but has not indicated whether it is receiving active investigative attention. To date, no additional suspects have been identified, and no evidence has been shared that could clarify what happened that night or who may have been involved. The decision to drop capital murder charges against the 2 arrested suspects caused a wave of public confusion and online speculation. Many in the Birmingham area expected the case to move toward trial after the arrests were made. When news broke that both men were released due to insufficient evidence, questions arose about the integrity of the initial investigation, the handling of evidence, and the standards used to bring charges in such high-profile cases. Social media platforms, especially YouTube, Reddit, and Facebook, began to circulate videos and discussions examining the details of the case. True crime creators and content analysts started to investigate public records and share case breakdowns to make sense of the developments. While these online discussions have raised awareness, they have not produced any confirmed new leads or breakthroughs. Both families of the victims, Kayla Warren and Bryan Adams, have not released any formal public statements to the press. However, Sources close to the families have stated that they are frustrated with the lack of resolution and are demanding answers from law enforcement. Community members who are familiar with the victims have echoed similar concerns. They question how a case with 2 fatalities could progress so slowly and why those initially arrested were let go without replacement suspects. There have been no community vigils or press conferences from the family. The silence has added another layer of mystery to an already complicated investigation. The victims' names, especially Kayla Warren, who was known locally as an aspiring artist, have continued to be mentioned online, but no organized campaigns or public memorials have been held by the family or city officials since the initial arrest period. As mainstream media coverage has declined due to the stalled investigation, the case has gained traction in the online true crime community. Numerous YouTube videos, podcast episodes, and blog entries have reviewed the timeline of events, the arrest and dismissal of charges, public records from the Birmingham court system, the backgrounds of both victims and suspects. Online creators have attempted to connect missing dots using available information, though no source has provided official new evidence. Most of the online material is speculative, relying on media reports and court filings. Nevertheless, the consistent online attention has kept the case in public conversation. Viewers and readers across the U.S. are now aware of the Birmingham double homicide, even though no formal developments have occurred since June 2025. If this story gripped your heart and left you questioning the truth, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with others who need to hear it. For more chilling true crime stories that dive deep into the mysteries behind these tragedies, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest updates, investigations, and thought-provoking discussions. Thank you for being part of this journey with us as we uncover the truth and seek justice. Together, we can make a difference. Stay safe, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next one.